From all indications, there were multiple shooters who fired dozens of shots, perhaps more than 50. Remarkably, all of those bullets missed a baby who was sitting in the car that was targeted.
Investigators remained at the scene well after nightfall at this corner littered with shell casings, where somehow a baby in this bullet-riddled car emerged unscathed.
What's the purpose of shooting at a car when you know there's a child in the car? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it could be a lot of other people who's lost their life here today.
Kirk Bell is the godfather of 26-year-old Gabryel Ayers, who relatives identify as the woman who was shot and killed in her white Chevy sedan around 1:30 p.m. at 79th and May Street, her car then crashing into a van.
A witness heard the crying first. They ran toward the white sedan, the one with shattered windows and bullet holes punched through every surface. The gunfire had stopped. The shooters were gone. But the crying, that sound cut through everything. Inside the vehicle, strapped into her car seat in the back, was a baby girl, less than 1 year old. She was holding a lollipop in her tiny hands, surrounded by broken glass and blood. The infant wasn't hurt, not a single scratch. But the woman in the passenger seat, her mother, had been hit multiple times. This happened in broad daylight. February 4th, 2026, around 1:25 in the afternoon. In a residential neighborhood in Chicago, where people were out, cars were passing, life was happening. The shooters didn't use handguns. They brought rifles, long guns, and they didn't fire a few warning shots. They unleashed over 50 bullets into that sedan, 50 rounds. They briefly retreated, got into a vehicle, came back, and fired again. Someone wanted the people in that car dead. They wanted it so badly that they didn't care or didn't bother to check that a baby was sitting in the back seat. The 27-year-old driver survived. The woman in the passenger seat didn't. 2 days later, police still don't know why it happened. No arrests, no clear motive. Just a motherless infant, a devastated family, and a community demanding answers. Her name was Gabryel Ayers. She was 26 years old, and this is her story. Hello, Crime Trail family. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, you've just stepped into one of the most disturbing cases we've covered, not because of what happened, but because of what we still don't know. Hit the subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications. Like this video. Share it. Cases like this need visibility. They need people asking questions. They need to stay alive in our collective consciousness. Now, let's talk about what happened on February 4th, 2026. Chicago, a city of nearly 3 million people. A place where neighborhoods stretch for miles, where communities have deep roots, where families have lived for generations. But Chicago has also become synonymous with something else, something darker, gun violence. 2025 was another brutal year. Shootings that happen in broad daylight, victims who had nothing to do with gangs or criminal activity, children caught in crossfire, mothers gunned down while running errands. The numbers tell a story, but they don't tell the whole story. Behind every statistic is a name, a face, a family left behind. Auburn Gresham sits on Chicago's South Side. If you've been following crime in this city, you've heard the name before. This neighborhood has been a flashpoint, a community that's seen wave after wave of gun violence, despite the tireless work of activists, community leaders, and residents who refuse to give up on their streets. And right in the heart of this neighborhood stands St. Sabina Church, led by Father Michael Flieger. For decades, Father Flieger has been fighting gun violence, organizing marches, confronting politicians, demanding change, calling out the systems that allow illegal weapons to flood these streets. So when violence erupted just over a block from that church on February 4th, 2026, it felt like a devastating mockery of everything this community has been fighting for. This is where Gabryel Ayers' story begins. This is where Gabryel Ayers comes in, 26 years old, a young mother, a woman with her whole life stretching out ahead of her. She wasn't a statistic waiting to happen. She wasn't involved in gangs. She wasn't out there living a life that put her in harm's way. Gabryel was just trying to make it, trying to raise her daughter, trying to navigate life in a neighborhood where violence is never far away, but hope still exists. Those who knew her describe a woman who loved her baby girl fiercely, a mother who was working to build something better, something safer for the next generation. On February 4th, 2026, Gabryel was in a white sedan traveling through Auburn, Gresham. She was in the passenger seat. A 27-year-old man was driving, and in the back seat, secured in her car seat, was Gabrielle's daughter, a baby girl, less than 1 year old. It was around 1:25 in the afternoon, the middle of the day. People were out, cars were passing, life was happening. Gabrielle had no idea what was about to unfold. The white sedan was moving down the street when they appeared. 3 suspects, armed with long guns, rifles, the kind of firepower you bring when failure isn't an option. And then they opened fire. The attack was overwhelming. Over 50 shots were fired into that vehicle, 50 bullets tearing through metal and glass. The windshield exploded. The doors were riddled with holes. The sound echoed through the neighborhood, sending residents running for cover. We heard what sounded like fireworks, but we knew it wasn't fireworks. It went on, one neighbor would later tell reporters. But the attack didn't end there. The shooters briefly retreated, maybe to reload, maybe to reposition. Then they got into a vehicle and came back. They fired another volley of shots at the sedan before finally fleeing the scene in a gray Dodge Durango, one dressed entirely in black with a handgun, the other 2 in gray clothing, one carrying a handgun, the other a rifle. This wasn't random. This wasn't being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was targeted, deliberate. Someone wanted that car, or someone in it, destroyed. The 27-year-old driver was hit. He survived and is currently in good condition. Gabryel Ayers wasn't so lucky. She died right there in the passenger seat, multiple gunshot wounds. She never stood a chance. And in the back seat, covered in shattered glass, surrounded by the smell of gunpowder and death, her baby girl was screaming. A witness rushed to the car. What they saw will haunt them forever. That infant, still strapped in her seat, clutching a lollipop in her hands, crying for her mother. The baby was physically unharmed. Not a scratch. Not a single bullet had touched her. But her mother was gone. Father Michael Flager, visibly shaken when he spoke to the press, said what everyone was thinking. They had long guns, in broad daylight. We need accountability. Accountability. That's what everyone wants. But first, they need answers. Because here's the thing that's keeping this case in the headlines. That's keeping people up at night. That's driving the internet absolutely crazy with speculation. Nobody knows why this happened. As of February 6th, 2026, 2 days after Gabryel was killed, no arrests have been made. According to Area 2 detectives, the motive remains unclear. Unclear. A woman was shot over 50 times in broad daylight with her baby in the back seat, and the police still don't know why. So the internet did what the internet does. People started theorizing, speculating, trying to make sense of something that feels senseless. And honestly, some of these theories are worth considering. Was this gang retaliation? Auburn Gresham has active gang territories. It's not a secret. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, this area has seen its share of territorial disputes, retaliatory shootings, and violence tied to organized criminal activity. So the first theory floating around is that Gabryel was connected to someone, maybe a boyfriend, maybe a family member, maybe just an acquaintance, who was involved in something dangerous, and she paid the price for someone else's actions. The thinking goes, she was targeted as a message. Kill her to hurt someone else. Send a warning. Make a point. But if that's true, why hasn't anyone claimed responsibility? Why is the motive still a mystery? Gang violence usually has a pattern, a logic, even if it's a twisted one. People talk. Word gets out. But in this case, silence. Was this personal? Maybe this wasn't about gangs at all. Maybe someone had a problem with Gabryel specifically. We live in an age where arguments that start on social media can end in real-world violence. Did Gabryel say something online that enraged the wrong person? Did she get into a dispute over money, over a relationship, over something we can't even imagine that escalated to murder? Did Gabryel witness something she shouldn't have? Did she know something that made her a liability? Was there a personal vendetta so strong that someone was willing to risk everything to end her life? Or was this a case of mistaken identity? Here's the theory that terrifies people the most. What if they got the wrong person? What if Gabryel Ayers died because she happened to be in a white sedan that looked like someone else's car? What if the shooters thought they were attacking a completely different target? But then remember, 50 shots, 2 separate attacks, the shooters retreating and coming back to finish the job. That doesn't feel like confusion. That feels like certainty. Unless unless they realized mid-attack that they had the wrong person and decided it was too late to stop. That they were already committed. We don't know which possibility is worse. Now here's the part that nobody can explain. The baby. If this attack was targeted, if the shooters knew who Gabryel was, if they followed her, if they planned this, then they also knew about her daughter. Think about what that means. They would have seen Gabryel getting into that car with an infant. They would have watched her secure that baby in the car seat. They would have known, beyond any shadow of doubt, that when they opened fire with rifles, they were shooting at a vehicle with a child inside. And they did it anyway. Over 50 bullets into a car with a baby in the back seat. What kind of rage drives that? What kind of hatred? What could a 26-year-old mother possibly have done to deserve execution while her child sat behind her?
Scathed.
What's the purpose of shooting at a car when you know there's a child in the car? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it could be a lot of other people who's lost their life here today.
Kirk.
Or, and this is just as disturbing, what if they didn't care? What if the baby was just acceptable collateral damage? What if ending Gabryel's life mattered so much to them that an infant's death was a risk they were willing to take? What did she do? What could anyone possibly do that would justify this level of violence? This level of disregard for innocent life? I want to hear from you. What do you think happened? Drop your theories in the comments. Do you think this was gang-related? Was it personal? Could it have been mistaken identity? And here's the real question. What kind of person fires into a car knowing there's a baby inside? So what are the police doing? According to the Chicago Police Department, Area 2 detectives are actively working this case. They have surveillance footage, they have evidence, they have witnesses. CWB Chicago reports that the video shows 3 suspects fleeing in a gray Dodge Durango. One was dressed entirely in black, carrying a handgun. The other 2 wore gray clothing, one with a handgun, another with a rifle. The footage exists, the evidence is there. The shooters were caught on camera. But as of February 6, 2026, not a single arrest has been made. Cook County Crime Stoppers is offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to arrests and convictions. They're asking anyone with information to come forward. Tips can be submitted anonymously. Multiple agencies are involved. The community is demanding answers. Father Pfleger has called for accountability. Residents are organizing vigils, demanding increased police presence, begging for this violence to stop. How many times does this have to happen before something changes? One Auburn Gresham resident asked reporters, her voice breaking. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, this case fits into a disturbing pattern. Auburn Gresham and surrounding neighborhoods have seen an uptick in shootings involving long guns, rifles that are illegally obtained and used in increasingly brazen attacks. Where are these weapons coming from? How are they ending up on these streets? And why are people willing to use them in broad daylight, in residential areas, with complete disregard for who might be caught in the crossfire? Those are questions for another video. Right now, the focus is on finding the 3 people who killed Gabryel Ayers and left her daughter motherless. The Auburn Gresham community is exhausted, not just sad, not just angry, exhausted. According to NBC Chicago, residents have organized vigils, they've marched, they've demanded change, they've done everything they can think of to stop the violence, and still, it keeps happening. Mothers are afraid to let their children play outside. People are terrified to go to the store in the middle of the day. The sense of safety, of normalcy, has been shattered. One resident told ABC7, "We can't even go to the store in the middle of the day without worrying. When is it going to stop?" That's the question on everyone's mind. Because Gabryel Ayers isn't the first victim of gun violence in this neighborhood, and unless something fundamental changes, she won't be the last. Father Pfleger, who has dedicated his life to fighting this violence, expressed both grief and frustration. The fact that this happened so close to St. Hind, Sabina Church, literally just over a block away, feels like a cruel joke. Like all the work, all the marches, all the pleas for peace, none of it matters when people can still show up with rifles in broad daylight and take a life. But at the center of all this community pain, all this policy discussion, all this debate about guns and gangs and violence, there's a real person. Gabryel Ayers was 26 years old. She had dreams. She had plans. She had a daughter who needed her. According to those close to her family, Gabryel was working to build a better life. She was a mother who loved her child fiercely, who wanted to give that baby girl opportunities and safety and a future. And now she's gone. Her family is shattered. They're not just grieving, they're desperate for answers. They want to know why. They want justice. They want the people who did this to face consequences for what they've taken. And that baby girl? She's alive. Physically, she's fine. Not a scratch on her. But she'll grow up without her mother. She'll never hear Gabryel's voice. She'll never feel her mother's arms around her. She'll only know her through photographs and stories told by people who loved her. That child will carry the weight of February 4th, 2026, for the rest of her life, even if she's too young to remember it. This isn't just a Chicago crime statistic. This is a family destroyed, a community traumatized, a little girl who will spend her whole life wondering why someone took her mother away. As of right now, February 6th, 2026, this case is unsolved. The suspects are still out there, walking free. While Gabryel's family plans a funeral and tries to figure out how to explain to that baby girl when she's old enough to understand what happened to her mother. So now I'm turning this to you, Crime Trail family. What do you think happened here? Was this gang retaliation? A personal vendetta? Mistaken identity? And what do you make of the fact that they fired into a car with a baby inside? Did they know and not care? Or did they never even check? Drop your theories in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's make sure Gabryel's case doesn't fade into the background noise of daily news cycles. If this video affected you, share it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button. It helps more than you realize. Every case we cover represents a real person, a real family, real grief. Gabryel Ayers deserves our attention. That baby girl deserves answers. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there.